Brock Lesnar was one of the most feared men in all of wrestling. And then he spiraled into one of the biggest downfalls in history. Let's dive in. Brock Lesnar was a gifted athlete since the dawn of time. He started his amateur wrestling career very early in his life. By the time this guy got to college, he looked like a world champion. And his college record was 106-5. If he wrestled a Rhino, I would put my money on Brock Lesnar. After college wrestling, Brock went on to OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling.
No, this isn't wrestling!
And he wrestled with the likes of John Cena, Randy Orton, Shelton Benjamin, and Batista. Let's hear Randy Orton's first impressions of this beast.
So blessed to be down there with guys like that. Shelton Benjamin was down there.
Was Lesnar there at one point?
Oh, Lesnar. Oh yeah. I remember the day he came. We were all like, "What the fuck?
What is that?"
Yeah. I remember. So we're all talking shit, under our breath. And here he comes. And back then there wasn't all. We had one ring in a shitty warehouse, and there was like 12 of us. So here comes Lesnar. We knew he was coming. We get in practice. We start doing the rope running drills where you just, you just burn, you just go. And he didn't hook the top rope, as I'm sure you've been told. Make sure you get the arm over that top rope, otherwise you're gonna end up in the bleachers. And sure enough, that motherfucker, he leapt out of the ring between the second and third rope and took out like 20 metal chairs. And then just popped up, dusted himself off, and was like, I bet y'all would like to see that again.
Brock Lesnar was an instant success when he moved from OVW to WWE. They strapped him in with Paul Heyman and they announced him as the next big thing. No, actually, the next big thing is kind of fucking lame, so thankfully they did change it to The Beast. He showed up to a hardcore match and he beat the living hell out of Spike Dudley, and then he proceeds to give Maven his first ever F5. People knew he was the real deal when his first ever feud in the WWE is going to be none other than the Hardy Boys. That's right, Brock Lesnar versus the Hardy Boys. One man wasn't enough, this guy needed two. After that feud, his career would start to skyrocket. He'd go on to beat Bubba, then Booker T, followed by Test, and finally pinning RVD, to become King of the Ring and have a championship match against The Rock. This match was long awaited by fans. Just look at how amazing these two look in the ring together. This is peak professional wrestling, and these guys laid the smackdown to each other. Brock Lesnar was no stranger to putting over his opponents. He was able to make his opponents look amazing. One of the most underrated sellers in the business. But he did come out on top of this match. He hit The Rock with an F5 and this started off his whole career. Now, let's fast forward a year later when he started his legendary feud with Kurt Angle.
Brock is a freak of nature, and there's no other way to describe him. He's the most talented, most gifted athlete I've ever seen in my life.
Look like a killing machine, don't I? Born to fight to kill, but ready to die, but I never will.
That was really fucking lame, huh? I wouldn't tell it to his face, though.
There's some nights I lay in bed and really believe that God put me on this earth to be a professional wrestler.
First time I met him, what happened was the Brooklyn Brawler went up to Brock and said, "Hey, how would you do against Kurt Angle in a wrestling match?" And Brock said, "He's too small, I'd kill him." So I walked up to Brock. It's the first time I met him. "Hey, Brock, how you doing? Kurt Angle, nice to meet you. By the way, you said you could whoop my butt. Let's get in the ring."
I just remember them messing with each other and also thinking to myself, well, who's going to break this one up if it starts going sideways?
And that's exactly what happened, but it was kind of planned. You see, Kurt Angle actually called him out to the ring to wrestle, and nobody knew how this would go. We wrestled just once and it was during the day before a WWE show back in 2002, said Kurt Angle. Dave taught me how to teach myself the technique instilled in me. That's ultimately how I beat Brock. Brock said he'd beat my ass. So when Brawler told me that, I said let's go. Angle went on to describe how he wasn't sure if he could actually beat Lesnar due to his sheer size and strength. However, Angle did that, he came on top in the match. Brock was picking Big Show up, double-legging him, just wrecking him, and that's when I thought, I don't know if I can beat this kid, Kurt Angle said. But I figured I may as well try. It was a tie match. I didn't dominate, but I won. There's a big difference between a national champion and a gold medalist. I knew Brock was going to do college wrestling with straight double legs. It was all about positioning. That's what they taught me, and that's why I hardly ever got scored on. Brock didn't score on me. These two were legendary in the ring, both amazing and gifted athletes. They always had amazing matches together. But not only was their in-ring chemistry amazing, their backstage antics were comedy gold. These guys were able to bring the best out of each other. This is the first time that we would see Brock Lesnar actually have some sort of character to him. And I shit you not, this is real. I bet nobody here had Brock Lesnar French kissing Kurt Angle on their bingo card. But after the Kurt Angle feud is when stuff would start going down on Brock Lesnar. You see, Brock Lesnar found his way against Goldberg, and what seemed like a dream match was just complete bullshit. Everyone knew that these two were leaving the company, so nobody gave a shit. And as a last-ditch effort, they made Stone Cold Steve Austin the guest referee. As soon as this match was over, Brock Lesnar went on to start his NFL career. It was not a long-lived career, and he was released after a couple of months. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Brock actually wrestled in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And one of his best feuds in New Japan was actually against Shinsuke Nakamura. Until Kurt Angle arrived. That's right, no matter where Brock went, Kurt Angle would follow Brock Lesnar. This was nowhere near as impressive as their WWE run. Now, Lesnar did drop the belt to Angle, and then this happened.
Fighting out of Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, Brock Lesnar!
That's right, Brock Lesnar started a new chapter in his life, the MMA chapter.
What's incredible with Brock is that Brock went from pro wrestling to being the UFC heavyweight champion, and did so with such a short amount of time of training in MMA. I mean, obviously he had a spectacular amateur wrestling career. He was a legit top flight amateur wrestler and a fucking genetic freak. All those things. But to be able to make that transition to winning the fucking world title against a guy like Randy Couture, I don't think he gets enough credit for what I think a lot of people say. Oh, he was so big and he was this and that and he did steroids, and there's all these excuses. Like, you don't understand what that guy did. Like, what that guy did is nothing short of insanity. Like, no one's ever done that before.
He's a monster, brother.
He's a monster.
He still is.
He's like the biggest genetic freak maybe I've ever seen in the sport.
This guy was actually born just to hurt people. He had 5 wins with 3 losses. It doesn't seem that impressive for the UFC, but let's face it, both me and you combined versus this guy would probably get our asses beat. He had to retire early due to medical reasons. TLDR, his intestines just did not like him. Now, he eventually made his way back into professional wrestling, but this man was unstoppable. It's as if he just entered his prime. But then, something we thought we would never see happened.
He's got it! Undertaker up at his shoulders again! Not again! Going for a triple! A third at 5 to the Undertaker! Brock Lesnar into the cover, hooks the leg, the streak is over.
This might just be the biggest moment in wrestling history. The Undertaker's streak was officially broken.
I personally hate that it happened. I feel like the WrestleMania brand almost was built around that streak, and then Brock comes in and he kills the streak.
A third at 5 to the Undertaker! The streak is over.
I watched the streak being broken, and I was standing in the production truck with 2 beers in my hand, and I damn near dropped both those beers.
I was watching Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker from the press box. When Brock Lesnar pinned The Undertaker, the entire room of a couple hundred people went dead silent.
You never thought The Undertaker was going to lose. That's something that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life.
It was hard to watch the whole thing from beginning to end, knowing the ramifications that came out of it. It's very difficult. I've never even gone back and watched it a second time. I just have let it kind of live.
I personally do not agree with the streak being broken. That being said, I cannot deny that him breaking the streak made him an absolute monster. He had the Universal title for 503 days. We actually thought that he would never fucking lose it. Defending it against Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns, they even fought for their advocate, Paul Heyman. He eventually passed the torch down to Cody Rhodes, and he was supposed to start feuding with Dominic Mysterio, with Brock Lesnar returning for the 2024 Royal Rumble, and eventually ending the feud during the Elimination Chamber. But holy shit, did that not happen. You see, Brock Lesnar's name was dropped in one of the biggest lawsuits on earth. Janelle Grant was heavily mistreated and decided to finally speak up about it. Now, Vince McMahon was one of the main culprits, and I highly recommend reading the case if you haven't. But Brock Lesnar's name was dropped. Anybody remember Chris Benoit and how they just erased him from the history of the WWE? Well, that is exactly the same treatment that Brock is getting. He was removed from the Royal Rumble and replaced with Braun Breaker. Obviously, everything that came after that, he was also removed from. And then he was removed from the WWE Superstar video game, along with being removed from the WWE 2K24 cover WrestleMania edition. And then they took him out even as a playable character. He was also removed from the introduction of WWE's weekly programming, with LA Knight replacing him. I think it is safe to say that we will never see Brock Lesnar step back into a WWE ring again.